It was the month of May. The spring of 1915 was running out. The spring offensives were turning into summer battles. There was no end in sight. Nothing like this war had ever been seen. It defied prophecy, it defeated understanding, it had escaped from the control of man. For 9 months now, every human endeavor had gone awry. For 9 months, all man's reason, all his ingenuity, all his science had produced only destruction beyond imagining, and sacrifice counted already in millions of lives. A 1,000 years of civilization seemed to be visibly crumbling. The insatiable guns incessantly demanded new victims. At sea, underwater weapons struck at the roots of a sailor's courage. On land, the coming of gas, poisoning the very air that men breathed, seemed to reduce to nothing the virtues of bravery, enterprise, and skill. Not only the soldiers awaiting the dire chances of each day in their squalid trenches felt the war's impact. It reached into every village and street with its demands for guns, for shells, for men. It uprooted tradition. It brought pain, hardship, opportunity, above all, change. Now, Britain's years of tranquil security were over. The awakening of the British people was abrupt and brutal. It first took the form of scandal, a munitions scandal, when the news broke of the Army's desperate shortage of shells. The Times quoted Sir John French, Commander-in-Chief of the British Expeditionary Force, saying,
"The want of an unlimited supply of high explosive was a fatal bar to our success."
The Daily Mail, the biggest newspaper in the country, deepened the sense of shock by attributing the famine to the nation's idol, Lord Kitchener. This was sacrilege, yet the British were becoming uneasy. For months, the best of their manhood had been pouring into the recruiting offices. It was Kitchener's own summons they had been obeying. The towering hero of legend, K of K, Kitchener of Khartoum. Surely Lord Kitchener could not have sent the army into battle without shells. The shell scandal was only part of a deeper unease about the whole conduct of the war. Lloyd George, Chancellor of the Exchequer, wrote,
"There was a sense of revolt against the attitude of the government and what was regarded as its leisurely and take-for-granted attitude in dealing with vitally serious matters, matters of life and death to the whole of the Allies, to the British Empire, and to hundreds of thousands of gallant young men who had offered their lives to their country."
On May the 26th, Britain's leadership changed. Asquith remained, but his government was now a coalition of Liberals, Conservatives, and Labour. And there was another innovation.
The Prime Minister has decided that a new department shall be created to be called the Ministry of Munitions, charged with organizing the supply of munitions of war. Mr. Lloyd George has undertaken the formulation and direction of this department.
For a moment, the mood of 1914 was displayed once more amid the facts of 1915. Italy declared war on Austria, and crowds packed the streets of London to celebrate and to cheer Italians going home to join up. Cheering was not enough. Within 5 days of his appointment, Lloyd George was rousing the nation to face reality.
"We are fighting against the best organized community in the world. The best organized whether for war or for peace. And we have been employing too much the haphazard go-as-you-please methods which, believe me, would not have enabled us to maintain our place as a nation, even in peace, much longer." The nation now needs all the machinery that is capable of being used for turning out munitions or equipment, all the skill that is available for that purpose, all the industry, all the labor, and all the strength, power, and resource of everyone to the utmost.
War had outgrown battlefields. It had become the test of a nation's technology.
The making of a shell case involves the metal trades, blast furnaces, steel works, iron and steel foundries, forges, stamps, drops and dies, rolling mills, drawn rod and wire works, and behind them the colliery and the iron ore quarry. It requires factories, and these in turn require machinery-covered electrical plant, factory equipment and machine tools, engines, pumps, turbines, road and rail transport, boiler making and constructional engineering work. The explosives for filling and propelling the shell from the gun involve the output of chemical works, dye works, gas works, and a great deal of very careful laboratory experiment, investigation and testing.
Germany lacked none of these things. Her industry, like her army, was organized on the grand scale. Her swift industrial growth had been based on science, on the ruthless exploitation of new ideas. Before 1914, German chemistry had supplied Britain with dyes for dresses and aspirins for headaches. Now Britain had to build her own chemical industry. There was a serious explosives famine, and without explosives, a shell was, in Lloyd George's words, just a harmless steel vase. Equally, it was harmless without a fuse. There were more than 50 parts in a shell fuse, parts that had to fit and work as accurately as clockwork. It was the big German clock and toy industries that made the fuses for the Jack Johnsons and coal boxes, which crashed on the British trenches. But in Britain, industries capable of mass-producing fuses were few, and too much of her equipment was out of date. While Kitchener recruited the new armies, Lloyd George began to create new industries. On May the 27th, he walked into his office at the Ministry of Munitions to attack his colossal task.
There was a table. I forget whether there were 1 or 2 chairs, but by the orders of the Board of Works, there was no carpet. I believe I had a greater struggle over getting a carpet than I had over getting £50 million for munitions. I said to my assistant, "Look at that table. Look at those 2 chairs." "Yes," he said. "What is the matter with them?" I said, "Those are the Ministry of Munitions."
In France, the problems of the home front were even worse. 1/6 of her industry lay in German hands. Mobilization had drained France of fit men. More than 1 million of them had already been killed, wounded, or posted missing. Behind the zone of the armies, France was now a country of women and old men and children. Women delivered the post and the newspapers. They drove the massive machines that watered the Paris streets and laid the summer dust and swept its ancient gutters free of refuse. Those Frenchmen who had idolized womanhood had to get used to seeing women in all kinds of unnatural and unromantic jobs.